Welcome back to Season 3 of Titans of Food Service. I'm your host, Nick Portillo, and today I'm looking forward to continuing our Across America in 50 Weeks tour, where I'm interviewing one Titan of Food Service from every state in the country. And on this episode, I'm going to be highlighting the state of Virginia, and to do so, I'm welcoming John Miller. So John, he's the president and COO at Legacy Food Group. John's career, you're going to find, is nothing short of impressive. In my mind, he is a home run hitter. He's had some great work experience, and we'll dive into that in the episode. But a little background on John. So he started actually in commercial banking, and on the episode, you're going to find we jokingly laughed that he accidentally got into the food service industry. And when he did, his first role was with Glacier Foods Company, where he served as the COO, CFO, and VP of Finance before ultimately becoming the president of that company. Now, Glacier was sold in 2014 to Gordon Food Service, another massive food service distribution company in the U.S. And at Gordon, he continued his career as the general manager of their Texas division. He stayed there for a few years and then moved over to Cisco, where he held various leadership roles, some including president of Cisco, Oklahoma, region president of Red River, and region president of South Texas. In our interview, we talk about many different things that John has learned along the way, as well as some tactics and strategies that he's employing currently and in the past within his various roles across the different companies he's worked for. So things like overall just how he leads these massive organizations, how he looks at strategy, how he looks at the marketplace. It's truly fascinating how he's viewing things. We also talk about the intricacies and details of deal structure. So essentially, when looking to be acquired or looking to acquire a competitor or somebody else out there in the industry, essentially what he's looking for, the multiples that are important to him and things like that. So really interesting and kind of a behind the scenes look at, how people are structuring some of those deals. And then also talking about how he plans strategy, what the capital and human resources that are needed to put together your strategy, whether it's 6 to 12 months or 12 to 24 months. So you'll see, we're going to talk about that, and hopefully you're going to take some nuggets away from this episode, no doubt. But before we jump into the conversation, I want to take a moment to explore the unique food service scene in Virginia. So I've been doing this with every episode now, highlighting a little bit about the state of that we're talking about for the episode. So Virginia is known for its rich history and southern charm. It also offers a diverse culinary landscape. The state is famous for its Chesapeake Bay oysters, Smithfield ham, and a burgeoning farm-to-table movement that emphasizes fresh local ingredients. So Virginia's food service industry reflects its blend of traditional southern flavors with a modern twist, offering everything from classic comfort food to innovative cuisine. And with that, let's go ahead and welcome John. Hey, John, welcome to the Titans of Food Service podcast. I appreciate you taking time to visit with me today.
Well, I appreciate it, Nick. Thanks for the invite.
Yeah, I know we were talking a little bit off camera about, so you're new to the state of Virginia. You moved in there from Oklahoma most recently.
Well, actually, most recently Texas.
Oh, most recently Texas.
Prior to that there was a brief stint in there in Oklahoma. So the last 5-6 years, I've been bouncing around a little bit. Nice. Prior to that, it was Houston based for sure.
And where in Virginia do you live now?
So I'm in the capital. I'm in Richmond.
In Richmond, Virginia. I don't think when I was in 8th grade, my middle school, we took a trip to the East Coast. We went to like Washington, D.C. I think we did Pennsylvania, like Gettysburg, kind of like a tour, like an American history tour kind of thing. I don't know if we went to Virginia. We might have. I feel like in Virginia, there are sites from like the Civil War. I'm sure there was battles that were fought there. But I can't recall if I've ever been there before.
A lot of that activity, and actually Richmond's not too far from Williamsburg, and a lot of people go there to get their colonial fix.
Yep. Oh, that's cool. Have you ever been there before?
Well, not since I've relocated to Richmond, but kind of back to your earlier years when, as a family, we came up and did a Williamsburg, D.C. Christmas.
Okay, so, nice.
That was the year my mother put us all in the same pajamas for the Christmas picture. So that is a stark reminder of my time in Virginia early in life.
That's so fun. I remember when I went, it was snowing, and at that time I had never been in snow before. and we were on a bus, and then there was a separate shuttle with all of our luggage. We had just gotten there, and that luggage shuttle broke down, so I was just in my shorts and a t-shirt, and I was freezing. It was so cold. I was like, oh my gosh. But they're like, there's nothing we can do. We don't have that bus right now.
Well, that is one thing Virginia has. It has variety and the weather, so we kind of hit all the seasons. So it's nice. We get a little cold, get a little warm, have a beautiful spring. So looking forward to fall. So this year will be the first fall that we spend here. Get to see
Nice.
the change of colors.
Amazing. So John, tell me, how'd you get into the food service industry?
Well, we'll say it was 100% accidental.
Okay.
So I began my career as a commercial banker and did that for the first 12 years of my career. And one of my customers was a gentleman by the name of Tom Glazier. And Tom's father had started a food service business called Glazier Foods in Houston. And Tom was a customer. And I helped him by financing their dry warehouse. They were looking to expand the business. So I financed the dry warehouse and started working with the company that way. Did some rolling stock, so some trucks and some trailers, and maintained that relationship for about 5 years. And then one day he invited me to a food show, and as I walked in, he said, "Hey, are you happy?" And I said, "Oh, I'll listen if you got something to talk about." And so we went to lunch, and it just one thing led to another. So I left. I left banking to join food service. Started on the financial end and anything that had to do with paperwork. So that was my foray into Glacier Foods at that point.
Is there any similarities between commercial baking and the food service industry?
I won't say ironically, but actually there is. So both businesses are huge top line businesses. Uh, both do lots of transactions, lots of volume, and both have painfully low margins when you get down. So it's about leveraging, what the growth in your growth profit or investment return, managing your expenses, and then yielding that bottom line. So they're very similar from that standpoint. Um, and then again, just as it's service to your customer. So, but just I would say much more intense on the food service side.
Yeah. So you go from the commercial banking industry into the food service industry. What did the first few years of food service look like for you?
Yeah. So first of all, here I was. I had been banking them. Had a 5 year relationship and thought I knew what food service was. And within about 20 minutes, I realized I didn't have a clue. So just learning the business, learning the industry was kind of the early stages, and then seeing where certainly relationships are paramount in our industry, whether it's with vendors or with customers, and that's really what drives success is leveraging those relationships and and making sure that you're building good alliances really between that full completion of the supply chain and seeing how those all tie together. And then just taking general, broader business principles. And we were at a point. So Glacier had been truly definitionally a family run business. And we were at
Okay.
a crossroads evolving into a, we'll say, professionally run business. And so from that aspect, putting in more structure within the organization. And so while that's a little more from a business principle side, it was also, factoring in how food service operates and making sure that, we're maintaining that great culture, but getting our folks to think about how to do the business a little differently.
Yeah, that makes sense. I was looking over, some of your past work experience. I mean, you've held some incredible positions working for Gordon Food Service. I know you've been the region vice president, or not vice president, excuse me, region president for Cisco. What was it that you think helped you get into those positions? I think there's a lot of people out there. Maybe let's just say they're starting off day one and they're a sales rep for a distributor, and one day they aspire to be that. Like, how did you be able to move up and get into these types of positions?
Well, uh, some of it obviously is right time, right place, but transitioning and being able to flow with the growth of an organization. So at Glacier, we
Hmm.
were blessed to be able. When I went to work there, we were about 120 million in revenue, and when we helped exit that business, we were on a run rate of about 800 million in revenue. And so, being able to adapt to those different phases and sizes, because as you're larger, you run the business differently. And
Hmm.
so, getting engaged and making sure that I continued my personal development and interaction and peer interaction was probably a big contributor. And then we sold the business to Gordon Food Service, so I transitioned in. And I think that the background from you know combining some of my experiences from banking and interactions there and being involved at Glacier with industry organizations. So we were part of Unipro and very active in IFTA, and that provided opportunities to kind of broaden my skill set. So when we transitioned to Gordon, it was a good fit. So large matrix organization, still very family oriented, but certainly much larger than Glacier. So I got that experience, and then that positioned me to, frankly, to transition to Cisco, which we all know is the largest within the industry. Um, and I came in at a time where uh, they needed someone to take over a particular business that was similar to what I had been running in Houston, and it was just a good fit. So some of it is fit, some of it is that preparation by just really being plugged into what's driving the industry.
So you mentioned going from Glacier to Gordon, kind of an acquisition of Glacier into Gordon. On the distribution side, how do they? What are the things that a buyer, of someone who's looking to acquire a competitor or somebody else in the marketplace? What are the things that they're looking for?
I think there's a couple of things. Where there's a geographical fit. So let's say there's a white space that you don't have today, or there's a market that you're looking to get into. So I think that can be a large impetus. If there is a customer segment that maybe the acquired company is very strong in, or something unique that they have. So let's say they have a meat cutting facility, or they have
Mm.
unique specialty company within the organization, within their distribution, that can be appealing. And then certainly, what type of staff and what type of and how large they are certainly provides an appeal within there. So those conversations, we would share kind of where we were looking for, to specifically to that Gordon opportunity. They were looking to expand westward, and we were a good fit at that point in time.
What about when I like what you said there. Essentially like finding a need or maybe expansion to another segment or whatever, whatever you see as an opportunity to expand your business. What about in terms of looking at the numbers? When for on the broker side, when there's an acquisition, a lot of times they look at maybe revenue, 1 times or 1.5 times revenue is a lot of times what they're looking for. On the distribution side, is it a multiple on EBITDA? Is it on revenue? How do you look at that? I would imagine each deal might be different, but is there like a formula?
So, yes, each deal is certainly unique, but I think the quickest rule of thumb and the measure of all measures is that EBITDA that you mentioned. And so, in our space at Legacy Food Group now, we are a acquirer, and so that's what we utilize when we're looking at potential acquisitions. And within the market, that is kind of the bellwether mark that people look at. So profitability is important. And so if you're preparing yourself for a sale, or if you're operating a business and want to position yourself for that, that is something that really needs to be evaluated. And so there are things that are taken into account as ad backs, and so those need to be clearly documented, and they can be supported, and they're legitimate things to take into consideration. But at times, if you're independent independent, you're running it perhaps more for tax reasons,
Sure.
and that doesn't always equal full profitability. And so
Yeah.
that profitability is one to maximize, kind of your sales price, and then depending on the performance of that will drive what the multiple ends up being. It's today I would say from a market standpoint, it's in a range from 6.5 to 11 times, somewhere in that universe.
Wow.
So it's got some variability in it, and we're back to, hey, do you provide a great geography? Do you provide something unique in your uh, offering? Um Size matters to some degree, and then
Yeah.
what your staffing looks like. Can you just fold in and continue to operate seamlessly, or do you need some succession planning in place in order for that transition to be totally successful?
Yeah, I would imagine that you made an interesting point about, maybe like an independent running their business for tax efficiency and tax purposes. There's got to be a lot of planning. Maybe even, you need like a whole 12 months, I'd imagine, of good books to be able to go to somebody to be acquired, and to look as attractive, to get that 6.5 to 11 times on EBITDA.
And the other thing is, as part of that planning process, look, information is king. We kind of know that in a lot of different categories, but your ability to provide clean, clear, detailed information moves you up that scale, and it moves the process along quicker. And that at times can be challenging. So whether that's kind of what your vendor demographics look like, purchases by vendor, or if it's by customer information detail, the more broad grasp information that you can provide there, the quicker the process and the more fluid it'll
What about in terms of the owner of the business? Maybe on the independent side, like for example, on the broker side, a lot of times when we look at acquiring a broker, the owner is very involved in the business. It may be a mom and pop. It may be, it's not the size of a distributor, and the involvement of the owner sometimes it's that could prohibit a deal because they're too involved in the business. And if we were to take them out of the business doesn't necessarily exist. Does that happen on the distribution side?
be. To a varying degree, certainly,
Okay.
our industry slash business on the distribution side, uh, it would be difficult to be a total absentee owner because there's just so many moving pieces. Uh, so that would require to have a experienced senior leader in place that's running the day to day. I would say across the independent landscape, that's probably, we'll say, 25-30% of the incidences. Usually it is, we'll say, an owner operator that's in there running the business. And so then it varies what their succession planning looks like. Do they have other family members, i.e., children or nephews, et
Mhm.
cetera, that are in the business that can then kind of step up to the next level? So that's one potential. And or uh, as in Glazer's case, Mr. Glazer went out and hired professional managers to come in and help, and then prove to his sisters, who were shareholders, um, that he put a good team in place. So those are kind of two scenarios there. From the acquirer side, specifically to our thesis, we like you know good strong owners that want to continue in the business, but maybe take some of their chips off the table and be able to leverage that opportunity and an eventual monetization of their investment. So it's kind of a two-step process. If you're selling to a strategic, a lot of times they have succession or they have a bench, and they'll transition some leadership. They'll keep some people in place and then put others to help drive the organization forward. So,
That makes sense. I would imagine sometimes it seems straightforward, but there is, you mentioned like having extra family and things like that. There's got to be some extra webs you have to go through to make those deals work. What about, as you become the region president of Cisco and even now currently, running Legacy, what does your day to day look like in that business or in those businesses?
yeah, so I will say those are two uh, full days in both of those roles, but they're really two different roles. So
Okay.
my most previous experience there at Cisco was really day to day operations of a operating company. So it was full engagement to make sure that trucks were leaving on time, that we had enough people to select cases at night, that we were out making our sufficient number of sales calls, and that we were meeting our financial targets of that operating business. So, we were a distribution center. I had two under my responsibility, and then we covered a large geography. So that was, um, we'd say, much more hands-on to the day-to-day activity. My current role is working with those that are running those operations that we've acquired at Legacy. So I'm at the holding
Mhm.
company level. And so today it's strategically thinking about um, what tools we need to put in place for those acquired companies to be most successful, whether it's technology, whether it's KPIs, measurements of where they're performing, whether it's streamlining the supply chain, those type activities, along with being involved with our acquisition strategy and going out and, as we talked about, talking to some of those owners of independent
Mhm.
businesses and laying out our thesis and our platform and how we think there's a better mousetrap, let's say, and
Mhm.
and then once we get them to the finish line, it's not really the finish line; it's the starting line. Getting them integrated into our platform and adding them to the bottom line and pushing towards our success here. So,
It sounds like you have a lot of experience definitely around strategy and building out a plan for the overall business and where you want to go and how you want to achieve that. For your current uh, business you're working at, Legacy, building out that strategy, determining who do I want to acquire and how do I want to, once we find someone, integrate them into your platform. How do you even begin to think about, do you look at it in terms of 12 months ahead, 3 years ahead, for 5, 10 year plan? How do you structure your strategy?
yeah, great question. So I would say they're really in buckets.
Okay.
There's that 6 to 12 month time horizon that you've got things either percolating or things that are active that you're folding in, and so you're putting more action oriented activities around that bucket. That 12 to 24 month is a little bit action oriented, but then it's a little more. All right, let's broaden the lens and see. All right, let's if we move to this territory, what would that mean, and how many targets could we consider to bring into the fold? And are there synergies there that we need to take into account? And what um, cadence do we need to be on to put those in place? And then what resources would it require in order to do that? So you're positioning both capital needs and human needs there when
Mhm.
you're thinking about those, and then what it'll take to put those in order. Much beyond that, you can do, frankly. So beyond that, let's say 2 to 5 year horizon, uh, certainly you can spend time thinking about that, and you should. You can put it kind of in that dream space, we'll call it. But the reality is, our industry is so fluid. Much past 2 years, you're rescripting everything to begin with. I mean, the basics are the basics, but the dynamics within the space and the opportunities for consolidation within our space, and then what's going on with supply chain. Um, you're probably rewriting that script. So you want to have
Yeah.
big themes, and that's beneficial, but trying to get granular beyond that 2 year space, I don't know that that's productive brain time
Yeah.
in that.
I get that. I think looking that far in advance, I think that I've read some study that you're like your brain doesn't even like recognize yourself like 10 years in advance. I don't remember the exact like details of that report, but looking to 5 years in advance, you're right. It is hard. There's so many different dynamics. You could have a global pandemic. You could have a downturn like the Great Reset, in 2008, 2009. There's so many unpredictable things outside of your control. Um, that could upend your even the greatest of plans. I like what you said about, determining the capital needs, your the human needs, looking at the strategy that way. What about I'm curious. You have a heck of a career in food service. I mean, really have had incredible experience. What about for you in terms of like learning new things and like what if you don't know how to solve a problem? Do you I know you mentioned like your network is important to you, but like what if, you're solving massive problems, in comparison to, let's just say myself, right? Like I run a business, but it's not the level of hundreds of million, like the problems that you're solving are gigantic. Like, I'm just curious if you don't know how to figure something out, how do you figure it out?
Well, so I've tried to keep up to date, and so I'll start with my first go to is Chat GPT, because it has all the answers. It is still kind of old school, back to that network. I've been blessed to be exposed to a lot of um, good thought leaders and people that have run some large organizations. So there's an avenue there. I think our industry in and of itself is very giving from the standpoint of if you're unless you're really a direct competitor, there's a huge willingness to share and support. And so that's an area. But then again, it's just looking back at those broader connections and go, okay, where is the tie? So depending on what the topic is. So if it's a insurance category that we got to go, deal with, who have I dealt with there? What prior experience might I have, or what connection? And then ferreting that out, and then asking questions, and not being um, so wrapped up or concerned that you have to admit that you don't have the answer or don't understand, and
Hmm.
being vulnerable enough to go, hey, I need your help. Explain this to me. I don't know where, I don't even know where to start. Can you point me in the right direction? And, 9 times out of 10, people will embrace that and push you on the right path.
Yeah, that makes sense. What about if you go back to the beginning of your career, before you even got into commercial banking, before you get into food service, what advice would you give to yourself coming out of school, getting before you even got into the workforce? What advice would you give yourself?
So don't have it predetermined first, because it's going to change. So
Yeah,
uh, having an idea what you want to do, that's not bad. And having an area or an identification of what some of your strengths are, or where your interests lie, that is important, and you want to navigate towards those, where you can maximize those, but realize that it is truly a journey. And reflecting back, there are times when I probably should have embraced more journey activity than going, okay, what I'm in this now and I'm going to be doing the same thing forever. And that's nothing's further from the truth. So uh, be willing to be a little adventurous, be willing to explore. And I would say always start with yes. When an opportunity presents itself, take it, even if it's something that you say, oh, okay, this doesn't, I don't see how this ties in. I promise you, you'll get something out of that experience that you'll look back and go, man, that's something I can build off of at a different point in time. Or it can reinforce, okay, this is something I never ever want to do again, and you can deviate, or you can let that go. Because there's times when we have this vision of what some activity is going to be, and we build it up to this great thing in our mind, and then we actually get exposed to it and go, that wasn't all of that. Let me move on down the road. But I would look towards saying yes to opportunities, and not thinking that, oh, that's not for me, or I'm and certainly never have the I'm too good for that mindset.
yeah. Yeah, what's interesting is I've had some presidents and CEOs of companies, food companies that are hundreds of millions, billions of dollars, and they agree with what you just said. They say yes, they always bet on themselves, and they also seem to be more comfortable taking big risks as well. Whether that's again betting on themselves and making a change to a different company, or within their own business. Maybe in your case, assessing a deal and acquiring a competitor, or acquiring maybe someone bigger than you, or whatever it may be. Taking those big risks, and that's really like what propels them to greatness within what they do. And so I really appreciate what you just said there.
Thanks.
So, looking at the future of your career or your personal life, what's do you want to accomplish that you've not yet accomplished?
Um, so it is really just kind of leaving a mark on the group that I'm working with now. And when I say a
Yeah,
mark uh, of one of basically of servitude, from the standpoint of I helped others get to a better spot, either making their transition easier, uh, from being an owner to kind of being in from a division leader standpoint. That's a mind shift, but saying, "Hey, I've walked in your shoes before. Let's do this together," and that they, at the end of the day, come back and go, "Hey, this was a positive experience." Um, kind of the ultimate would be our financial sponsor is one that has entrusted us with capital, and making sure that they're happy with the return
yeah,
that we provide, and really making a mark of the folks that we acquire, that they come back and go, you know what, I'm glad that I got engaged with Legacy Food Group and made that choice. And you know, I'm better for it. My company's better for it, and you know, we all uh, end up being financially successful out of that activity. It's not the end all be all, but it is a scorecard at the end of the day,
That's right.
and it is one that you can certainly say, okay, that was a plus or a minus depending on that outcome. But singularly focused on that, no. But that is a telltale sign of, hey, job well done.
Amazing. I love that. Well, John, thank you so much for taking your time to join me here on the podcast. I really appreciate it. And it's great to meet you as well and learn about your story. I always tell people I always take away something. I always learn something from these conversations, and I definitely did here. So thank you.
Well, I appreciate that. As I mentioned in our note back and forth, I've been keeping an eye on you for a while, and always enjoy,
Yeah.
uh, your posts and stuff. And I appreciate the opportunity to be on the podcast.
Yeah. Thank you so much, John.